What's up, guys? Welcome to the first real video, the first real content video on this channel. As promised, today we are going to be previewing the AFC, and the NFC will be coming tomorrow. The article for this is already up, so if you want to check it out, the link will be down below in the description. So read that if you haven't. If you want to, watch this if you haven't. If you want to, you know the deal. So let's get into it. So the AFC is really interesting because, last year it was kind of like the Chiefs and everyone else. The Bills really turned it on at the end of the season, but then when the Bills and the Chiefs met in the playoffs, it was like not even close. But this year it's really different because once the Chiefs won the AFC and they got to the Super Bowl, they were pummeled essentially by Tampa Bay. That game was not close for a second, and I think that's caused a bit of a shakeup. Obviously, the Chiefs were just exploited in so many facets, especially on the offensive line. And while I do think they have fixed a lot of those problems on the offensive line, it could take a while for things to get back to normal in Kansas City. So I think things are going to be a lot more open this year in the AFC. And so we're just going to go through it division by division, team by team. And I'll just preview how I think the team is going to do, what their record is going to be. I've filled out the whole schedule, wins and losses and everything. So if you want to fact check me on, these records don't add up, I'd say wait until tomorrow, and then you can add up all the records and find out if I'm a fraud or not. But yeah, so we're going to start with the AFC East. Speaking of the Buffalo Bills, obviously this is, their division. They're the only really elite team in this division. While I do think the Patriots and Dolphins are pretty good, and I'll get into that more when I talk about those teams specifically, this is the Bills division. It's not even close. So I have the Bills going a whopping 15-2 this year. Kind of weird to say those 17 game records out loud, isn't it? That's just, I'm not going to get used to that anytime soon. But yes, I have the Bills going 15-2 this season. And if you care that much, the only games I have them losing are at Kansas City in week 5, and I have them losing to the Patriots in week 13, because I think, Bill will steal one of those games. But 15-2 for the Buffalo Bills. Now, why? Why is this a 15-2 team? They lost the AFC Championship game. They have plenty of holes on the roster. Yes, all of that is true. They cannot run the football. This is true. They couldn't do it last year. They did nothing to remedy it this offseason. Their running backs are still Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. They cannot run the football. And they can't get after the passer. They don't have a good pass rush. They have a really good secondary, but without a good pass rush, there's only so much that you can do. And so I'm a boomer in terms of football philosophies. I believe in run game and pass rush to be, the bread and butter for how you win football games. But even I can recognize that the NFL is an ever-changing league, and all you need really to win and be super successful at this level is having an elite passing attack. And the Bills have one of the more elite passing attacks in football, obviously headlined by Josh Allen, who just signed a mega deal, a 6-year extension worth, I think, $258 million. Obviously, they have the utmost faith in Josh Allen to be their guy moving forward, their quarterback of the future. And while I think that is a little bit of an extreme figure, $250 million, I mean, the $40 million plus a year is hard to wrap your head around. But I mean, as long as they got Stephon Diggs catching footballs from him, Cole Beasley established, he was a Pro Bowl wide receiver last year. Take that how you will. Their passing attack is really just one of the better ones in the National Football League. And when you combine that with the fact that their schedule is so easy, I mean, just if you are thinking right now, oh my God, 15 wins for the Buffalo Bills, that sounds insane. Please go on your phone, go Google it, open ESPN or NFL or whatever, and look at the Bills' schedule. It is so unbelievably easy. I think they're going to rip through their schedule like a hot knife through butter. Like I said, one of their only tough games is Kansas City, which I think they're going to lose. They also play, Pittsburgh, which might be a problem, but like last year they played Pittsburgh and dismantled them. You have to keep in mind they play a first-place schedule, but those first-place teams are Kansas City, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh. Tennessee and Pittsburgh aren't going to beat this team, I promise you that. So it's a very easy schedule. I think they're going to waltz through it. 15 wins. I don't even think it's being generous. I think this team absolutely has what it takes to win that many games. And so, yeah, they're my best team in the conference, best team in this division. And it's really their... I wouldn't even say their division. It's probably their conference to lose at this point. They're just that good. Second place in the East, I have the New England Patriots sitting at 11-6. So there's just no way this team is going to be bad back-to-back years. But I also don't. I think if you completely disregard last year, you strictly look at this team on paper. Like if you put everything on paper and handed it to an objective NFL viewer, they'd say, yeah, this is a playoff team. You have Cam Newton in his second year in this system. He's looked pretty good in camp. I've heard good things. I've seen good things. Maybe it'll work out. Maybe it won't. Last year wasn't very good. But I have faith. I have faith in Cam. And even if he loses the job at some point, Mac Jones is right behind him. Their first-round pick out of Alabama, obviously. And Mac Jones was I think played 5 years at Alabama, was a starter for like a year and a little bit of his of the previous year. National champion, plenty of experience, right? If there's anybody you want to replace Cam, obviously that's the goal, is that he's the Cam replacement eventually. But even if it starts this year, I think Mac is talented enough, they'll coach him enough, and he's experienced enough to be able to, game manage the team to several wins and to a playoff appearance. But even if it's Cam for all 17 games, this is a playoff team. They've completely, overhauled the offense. Additions like Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver, obviously Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, both, very good tight ends. I think Jonnu Smith had like more touchdowns than any other tight end last year, something like that. He was very productive in Tennessee. That was this team's biggest, void last year, was, their defense is great, needs no introduction, obviously. It always will be if this is a Bill Belichick team in New England. But with a rejuvenated offense, I think this is 100% a playoff team. Their schedule isn't too difficult. They have plenty of talent on the roster. Bill Belichick is not going to miss the playoffs in back-to-back years. Like, anybody who knows anything about the NFL will tell you that is true. I think 11 wins is, a little bit average, maybe a little bit above average for a team of this caliber. I think it'll take, a couple of weeks, maybe, the month of September, to figure out all these moving pieces. But they have the benefit of having this training camp. That wasn't the case last year. And so I think New England will be just fine. And they're a playoff team, in my opinion. Now, the third place team in this division, which is a very strange team, in my opinion, is the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins just missed out on the playoffs last year, sitting at 10-6. I have them going 10-7 this year. I think it's going to be a very similar story. So last year, the thing that held Miami back was they didn't have consistent, good quarterback play. Obviously, it was Ryan Fitzpatrick for a little bit at the start. Then it was Tua the rest of the way. And Fitz was good, and even when Tua got benched sometimes and Fitz came in, Fitz was winning games. Now Fitz is in D.C., and it's Tua's team for all 17 games. I just don't think I saw enough out of Tua Tagovailoa last year to convince me that as a full starter for the whole season, he can lead this team to the playoffs. I want him to prove me wrong, because I like Tua, and I think he has what it takes in terms of talent. I think he has what it takes in terms of the talent around him. I mean, this is undeniably one of the most stacked rosters, not just in the AFC, but in the NFL. Brian Flores, as a head coach, has proven himself as a really, really great head coach, one of the better Belichick disciples. They have good pieces on offense. They went out and drafted Jalen Waddle in the first round, who is just one of the most explosive players I've ever seen at the collegiate level. Devontae Parker is a great wide receiver as well. Mike Gesicki, one of the better tight ends in football. Their defense is stacked. Xavier Howard, there was that weird saga in the last couple of weeks where he wanted out of Miami, but they figured it out and he signed a contract extension, so good for him. They have plenty of other great pieces on defense. Their secondary is stacked. This is a really, really good team, but it's a classic case of our roster is great, but the most important position on the field is lacking, and that's quarterback. And I really don't know if Tua has what it takes to lead this team to the playoffs. I think it'll be very, very similar to last year, where they'll be on the outside looking in when it comes down to the end of the season. They'll be right in the hunt all year long, but with a better New England in the division and with a very good Buffalo in the division, it's not a very easy schedule for Miami. I just I don't see it with this team, and it's mainly because of Tua. Again, I'd love for him to prove me wrong, but he has to show me something before I change my opinion. And so I have Miami just on the outside looking in at 10-7, and then fourth place, the New York Jets. There's really nothing I can say about this team to describe how terrible they are. So dating back to last year, obviously they had one job last year that was literally to just go 0-16. They had Trevor Lawrence ready to fall right into their laps. They threw it away at the end of the season. So instead of drafting Trevor Lawrence, they draft Zach Wilson, second overall out of BYU. I couldn't feel more disgust at that pick. I didn't do any draft coverage, but I had Zach Wilson as the fifth best quarterback in the draft. I mean, easily behind Trey Lance and Justin Fields, and then I do think Mac Jones is better as well. He's just very unproven. I don't think raw is the right word, because I feel like with the term raw, there's a lot of room for development. I just straight up do not see it with Zach Wilson. I think it was a complete miss of a pick. And even if they did have Trevor Lawrence, this team would still be terrible, because there's nothing else good going on this team. I think their best unit is the offensive line. Mekhi Becton last year in his rookie year was great. I mean, he's an absolute tank. Obviously, he's going to be really good. They went out and got Morgan Moses to put on the other side, so at least Zach Wilson will have a good pocket. And they also drafted Elijah Vera Tucker, trading up for him in the draft, the guard out of USC. And so their offensive line is really good. But what does it matter? I mean, Zach Wilson, I don't see it with him. I couldn't tell you who starts at running back for this team. Maybe LaMichael Pirine. Their wide receivers are nothing to write home about, although they we still haven't seen a lot of Denzel Mims. Maybe he develops into the guy they want him to be. Jamison Crowder is good, not great, pretty good. If Jamison Crowder is your wide receiver one, what does that say about your wide receiver room? Their defense is solid. They have a lot of nice pieces. I really like Marcus May, the safety. They drafted this guy Ashton Davis last year out of California, who might develop into something good. I don't know. Quinnen Williams up front is a really solid nose tackle, but I mean, there's just a couple good players here and there, a couple good, not great players here and there. This team is just genuinely terrible. I do think Robert Saleh was a decent hire for head coach, because, I mean, he was one of the more coveted names in the market, but if there's anything the New York Jets didn't need, it was another defensive head coach after the Rex Ryan era. But I mean, there's really no saving this team, in my opinion. I have them at 2-15, and that might be a generous estimate. So that's the AFC East. We got Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, Jets. Bills and Patriots both make the playoffs. Now on to the North. First place in the North, Again, pretty easy choice is the Baltimore Ravens, and I have them at 14-3. This is a really, really good team. They were really good on paper last year, but there was something missing, especially offensively, that held them back to only 10 or 11 wins. But this year is going to be scary. Their biggest hole was their passing game, and they went out and attacked it by drafting Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota in the first round, just an incredible pro-ready wide receiver who took last year off. So just very pro-ready. I loved him even when he was playing, when he was a sophomore at Minnesota or a freshman. And they also signed Sammy Watkins, who hasn't, been the best version of himself in recent years, but got plenty of good experience in Kansas City, won a Super Bowl. And those are two really good options that Lamar Jackson now has to throw the ball to. And Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson. He's one of the most, if not the most explosive player in college football. Sorry, not college football, the NFL. And he needs no introduction. J.K. Dobbins out of the backfield, his second year. I think he's a pretty good piece. Nothing amazing, but certainly good in an offense that can run the football extremely well because they have Lamar Jackson. Their defense is just insanely stacked, just like it was last year. That also needs no introduction. I just think this year's Ravens team will be a vastly improved version of last year's Ravens team. And last year's Ravens team wasn't even bad. They just, slumped in the wrong parts of the season. They won a playoff game. They did get shut down by Buffalo in the divisional round, but I mean, this is a really, really good team. I feel very, very strongly about Baltimore. And, they are, in my opinion, the second best team in the conference. So, first place in the North, Ravens, 14-3. Second place right behind them, and not too far off, in my opinion, the Cleveland Browns. I don't know what it is about this team, but I feel very, very strong about them. I actually do know what it is. I mean, obviously there's some extraneous, maybe supernatural factor that's like, yes, I feel very strongly about them. But this roster is just nasty from top to bottom. I think, like Miami, it's a very good roster, and the worst position is quarterback, but I think Baker Mayfield is light years ahead of Tua Tagovailoa. And last year, he really, really proved that. Even after Odell Beckham Jr. went down with the ACL tear, that was when Baker turned it on, and he was great. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and let my salt dictate my opinion on this guy. Baker was very good last year, and the rest of the team is just stacked. If he can figure out things with OBJ, this is now, I think, the third year of OBJ in Cleveland, and they've still yet to figure it out. If they figure it out, like that's going to be scary, because he also has Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Austin Hooper to throw the ball to. Even guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones last year really showed up as really serviceable pass catchers. They have the best running back duo in football, not even close. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs in football, and Kareem Hunt is the best backup running back you could ever ask for. And then their defense, while it underwent a lot of turnover this offseason, is still really, really good. I mean, Myles Garrett is still there. They have really good DBs like Denzel Ward. Maybe Greedy Williams figures it out. This is just a good team, a really solid team from top to bottom. And like I said before, they have my two favorite things that a team can possibly have: a good run game and a good defense. And Baker Mayfield has shown that he is a good starting quarterback in this league, and he can get it done. And I just have the utmost faith in the Cleveland Browns, and I never thought I'd say that, but I really do. So I have this team at 12-5 in second place in the AFC North as the number one wild card team, so the 5 seed in the AFC. But I have very high hopes this year for Cleveland, and I hope they figure it out. I really do. Third place, we have my my good friends, the Pittsburgh Steelers. If anyone read my content last year, they would know the disdain I have for this team. But that was last year. This is this year. Not much has changed. The biggest hole, obviously, last year with Pittsburgh was no running game, because there was no running game whatsoever. Big Ben was throwing the ball practically 50 times a game. It was gross. And their wide receivers are they're good, but I mean, I don't know. I think the best wide receiver on this team is Deontay Johnson, just because he's very quick, he gets separation really easily, he's really nice in space, he's fast. Compared to Chase Claypool, who's just I'm big, I run fast, I don't think he's very good at all. I never thought he was. And then Juju Smith-Schuster is just one of the more infamous players in the NFL now, based on last year's antics off the field on social media. Just so easily dislikable. And I don't think I think that stuff has really gotten to his head, because I think he's not the player he was earlier in his career. But they attacked their hole in the running game. They drafted Najee Harris out of Alabama in the first round of the draft. And I don't know how to feel about it, because Najee Harris was a 4-year player at Alabama, a 3-year starter. And while he was putting up video game numbers, he has every statistical record at Alabama for a running back. He has a lot of mileage on him, taking a lot of hits, facing SEC schedules, playoff games, national championship games, facing Clemson and Ohio State and Georgia. And I don't know. There's just drafting running backs early is always a bit of a gamble. Sometimes it works out, like in the case of Oakland with Josh Jacobs. But Josh Jacobs wasn't even the starting running back, really, for the most part at Alabama, and he didn't have that much mileage on him. They just saw a guy with a lot of talent, and they said, hey, we can develop this guy into our starting running back. Najee Harris is just I don't know if he can do that. I think he has the talent to do it, just based on what I saw in college, but like I said, that's a lot of mileage to have on a guy you draft in the first round as a running back. And I just think for the Steelers, based on their needs, it was a bad move. So their offense is going to be okay. Their defense is going to be great, as always. TJ Watt, a lot of people thought he should have been Defensive Player of the Year last year, led the league in sacks last year. Obviously really good. They have a great defensive line. They have a stacked secondary, headlined by the likes of Minkah Fitzpatrick. But I don't see it with this team. I didn't see it with them last year. I do not see it with them at all this year. I have them at 9-8, just a very average team. They'll beat the teams they're better than, just like we're better than you, we will beat you. And they will lose to the teams that are at their level or slightly better or a lot better. This is a very average team, in my opinion, not making the playoffs at 9-8. I have no hopes. I don't see a upward trajectory for this team at all. So, yeah, on to the last place team in this division, the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, I think that's a given. And I really have just a bone to pick with the Cincinnati Bengals, because last year, obviously the story is Joe Burrow has no offensive line. That causes him to, lose his leg, essentially. And so how do we, as the Cincinnati Bengals, attack this problem? We lost our quarterback in week 8 or 9 or something for the season. Even before that, he was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. We drafted him first overall. We need to get him some protection and make sure we can sustain him for the future. We have plenty of good weapons on offense. We have Joe Mixon behind him on the outside, Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. Just beef up the offensive line, and honestly, we should be okay. So with the 5th overall pick, we're going to take Jamar Chase, the wide receiver out of LSU, instead of Penei Sewell, who was, generational left tackle prospect out of Oregon, who ended up falling 2 picks later to the Detroit Lions. So how does this solve our problem? Well, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Now, I understand the Chase pick, right? And I'm not completely opposed to it. I'm mostly opposed to it. But Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow were college teammates. He was his best receiver at LSU, probably his favorite receiver at LSU. He's the best receiver in this draft class. and an incredibly, incredibly talented player. But what does this do for the long term? You know, we have 2 solid starting wide receivers, but we have no offensive line. I mean, you just got to take the generational offensive lineman that fell right into your laps. Okay, I understand maybe you want to make Joe Burrow's mental, a little bit better. You want to say, hey, we'll bring your friend over, as opposed to this guy out of Oregon who's just going to be here to protect you. I get that, but that was the one job, in my opinion, this team had to secure any semblance of a future, and I just think they failed colossally, and I think they're really going to pay for it. Defensively, there's nothing really to write home about on this team. I think Jesse Bates is one of the more solid safeties in the NFL, but other than that, their best corner was Will Jackson, now a part of the Washington football team. There's just not a lot to write home about. They did extend Sam Hubbard, star defensive end out of Ohio State, so good for him. That's a really solid defensive piece, and I'm glad they locked him up, keeping him as an anchor on the defensive line, but it won't matter. Joe Burrow will be running for his life every game. He'll be, again, one of the more sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. And, nothing to write home about on this team. I have them going 5-12. I think 5 wins might be a little bit generous, but I think they are talented enough to win 5 games. 5 games out of 17. I mean, come on. But they needed to address the offensive line in a big way. They missed. They whiffed. And I think they're going to pay for it, unfortunately. So, AFC North, I got Ravens, Browns, Steelers, Bengals, with the Ravens and the Browns both making the playoffs. So, on to the AFC South. Now, before I get into any of the specific teams in this division, I want to just say, I think this is not the best. I think this is the worst division in football. And there is a reason for that. It's more of a recent development with the Colts, and I'll get into that when I get into them. But this division is just, terrible on paper, at least at the moment. The best team is Tennessee, and I have them in first place. But I really think this division is going to get, ripped apart this season. It wouldn't shock me if, Tennessee wins this division, being the only team with a winning record. In fact, that's what I have predicted. So in first place, I have Tennessee at 11-6. So the Titans are pretty much the same team as last year. The big things are bringing in Julio Jones, trading for Julio Jones. He's old now, he hasn't had as big of an impact as he did, maybe 4 or 5 years ago in Atlanta. In the last couple of years, maybe he finds, new life in Tennessee, but he won't even be the number 1 option because A.J. Brown is on this team, and he is, honestly, I think still extremely underrated. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in football, bar none. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill is a good quarterback, top 15 quarterback in this league maybe, but he does exactly what he needs to do for this team to win football games, and it has shown in the last couple of years. So I have no complaints about Ryan Tannehill. And then, of course, behind him is Derrick Henry, last year's Offensive Player of the Year, ran for over 2,000 yards. This offense is stacked. Guys like A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry really need no introduction, and all 3 of them are going to be beasts this year. Maybe Julio won't put up the numbers like he has in the past, but you can definitely bet that A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry will. But what was this team's biggest problem last year? They could not play defense, right? In any level. Up front, they could not rush the passer. I don't think last year's Tennessee Titans defensive line could get past a Pop Warner offensive line. And moreover, they can't play coverage. Their secondary is not good. Wasn't good last year, in my opinion. Still is not good. They lost Adoree Jackson in free agency, and while I don't think very highly of Adoree Jackson, he's still one of your best corners for what it's worth, and now he's gone. They drafted Caleb Farley in the first round, the corner out of Virginia Tech, who I think is a very good player, but has this nagging injury problem that caused him to slip all the way to the Titans draft spot. And I think drafting a guy who slips because of an injury problem is just too risky because that injury. I've seen it too many times. That same injury will hold them back in the pros, and it's sad. But I really don't think Caleb Farley is going to be all that in the NFL because of his injuries. I thought he was a great player at Virginia Tech, but I don't see it with him in the NFL. It's too hard to see that. But this team's offensive talent will be enough to win them games, especially shootouts like we saw last year. They had so many shootouts against Baltimore, Houston. So they'll be fine in that regard. But I have them at 11-6. They're just the best team in this division, and they'll beat up on the teams in their division. They really don't have an excuse to lose any of their 6 division games. But, 11-6 for Tennessee, the only team with a winning record in this division. And that is because the Indianapolis Colts have a lot of stuff going on right now, a lot of bad stuff. Carson Wentz, who they traded for this offseason from the Philadelphia Eagles, which I genuinely thought was a good move because Frank Reich is the head coach of this team. He was the offensive coordinator for that Super Bowl winning team in Philadelphia, and while it wasn't Carson Wentz who won the Super Bowl, he was the MVP through 13, 14 weeks of that team, not just of that team, of the league. It was the best Carson Wentz we'd ever seen. He hasn't been remotely the same since his injury that year, but if there's anybody, you've heard probably plenty of people say it by now, if there's anybody who can fix him, it's Frank Reich. But now he has a foot injury. They said he's out for 5 to 12 weeks. They said he's avoiding surgery, so it won't be a long-term injury, but if the longest possible time he's out is 12 weeks, that is, a good chunk of the season that he's going to miss. Moreover, the best player on the Colts is Quentin Nelson, their Pro Bowl, All-Pro, all whatever you want to say, guard, is the best player on the team. He's the best offensive lineman in football, in my opinion. And now he's gone also for 5 to 12 weeks. Now, I'm assuming worst-case scenario here because Carson Wentz is an injury-prone guy. He's a guy whose career has been dragged down by injuries. So when they say 5 to 12 weeks, I'm not expecting to see Carson Wentz back in 5 weeks. And while I believe Quentin Nelson will be back sooner than later, it doesn't change the fact that this team will not have a quarterback. Their quarterbacks at the moment are Jacob Eason, who they drafted last year out of Washington, who is a very meh guy. A good college quarterback, but in the NFL, I don't know. And then Sam Ehlinger, who they drafted out of Texas this year, who is, if you saw even a second of Sam Ehlinger at Texas, you just know what type of player he is. I just don't see him being a good NFL quarterback. So what is this team going to do? They don't have the greatest offense in the world. They do have Jonathan Taylor at running back, who, was great last year in his rookie season. And they have some good pieces on offense. Pittman, the wide receiver, is really good. Paris Campbell is coming back from injury. But without a serviceable starting quarterback and their best offensive lineman, their best player, what is this team going to do? Their defense is great, yes. But what does it mean? At this point, they're just last year's New England Patriots, right? So I don't see it with this team. Their schedule is also brutal, and I'm being very hard on them with this, but as it stands today, I have the Indianapolis Colts as a 4-13 team. I don't think they'll go 4-13. I don't. But the way I filled out the schedule was I said no Carson Wentz, no Quentin Nelson, because even if they do come back, how effective will they be? They're going to be on a bad foot. That's, for a quarterback and an offensive lineman, ridiculously important. And I just don't see it with this team. And it sucks because up until those injuries, I did see it with this team. I thought at the very least they'd be fighting for a wild card spot, maybe get a wild card spot. But I've lost it with the Colts, unfortunately. So 4-13, still somehow in second place in this division. Third place, also 4-13, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. One of the more interesting teams now in the NFL, because they have begun their come up with two extremely important new additions. Urban Meyer brought in to be head coach of this team. I still don't know how I feel about it. Um, Obviously, Urban's reputation precedes him as a college football generational head coach, one of the better head coaches in the history of college football. Won multiple national championships at multiple schools. Took a break from coaching, and now is back, his first ever NFL coaching job. And I just don't know how I feel about it. If his health is still an issue, that's a really, really big deal. Anyone who saw Ohio State in Urban Meyer's final season knows how much his health affected him. And if that's the case this year, then that could be trouble for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But obviously it's not all about Urban Meyer and all of his buddies he brought in to run the team with him. This team was gifted the number 1 overall pick from the New York Jets last year. So, in effect, they were gifted Trevor Lawrence, the messiah of quarterback prospects. I do think Trevor is as good as advertised. I saw his entire college career. I saw him dismantle amazing defenses. And even as just a prospect, you can throw his college stats and games out the window. Just as a prospect, he fits the bill. 100%. He does. Now, the rest of the offense isn't exactly all that. They did draft, Lawrence's college running back, Travis Etienne, with their other first-round pick. Interesting pick, but now they have a very nice running back duo in Etienne and James Robinson. Although I do think Travis Etienne is much like a Najee Harris in terms of he spent all 4 years at college. He has a lot of mileage on him. So I do think it's, James Robinson's starting running back job, which is kind of head-scratching because why would you draft a third down back in the first round? But this is Urban Meyer's team. There's going to be a lot of weird decisions made. You can be rest assured of that. Otherwise, on offense, there's nothing really to look at. They did bring in Marvin Jones. I think that's a very nice pickup for Lawrence, a solid, established NFL wide receiver. DJ Chark is very good, although I know he's been undergoing, whether it's injury problems or front office problems, there's something that's keeping DJ Chark at bay. And Laviska Shenault last year kind of showed up as a nice wide receiver. So there's some pieces here. Their defense is really nice. Miles Jack's still there. C.J. Henderson, last year's first-round pick, didn't exactly pan out in year one, and now they're saying they might trade him, so we'll see what happens there. But this is just Jacksonville's gimme year, their year to get their bearings set and figure things out. So just keep Trevor upright, keep him healthy, accumulate the stats. Don't let Urban do anything too stupid. And this team has a nice future. They definitely have a future. So 4-13 for the Jaguars, but one of the more interesting teams in the NFL. And then in last place, the Houston Texans. What can I say about this team? This is the worst team in football. This is the worst run franchise in football. This is probably at the moment the most dysfunctional team, the most dysfunctional franchise. It is embarrassing how this team has conducted themselves in the last year or so. Last year they were terrible, right? Obviously. They fired Bill O'Brien. That didn't stop them from making stupid decisions in the offseason. They didn't have a first-round pick, so despite going 4-12 last year, the Dolphins were the team picking 6th overall, not the Houston Texans. Although I think the pick was there was a 3rd overall pick that the Texans would have had. So, but the one bright spot through it all, right, is the same as it's always been with the Texans. Deshaun Watson. Everyone's favorite quarterback. Everyone loves to root for Deshaun Watson. He's so lovable, so likable. Oh, we feel bad for him because he plays on such a garbage team and they can't win anything. But, at least Deshaun is a star. And Deshaun is a star. But, I don't need to get into it. You already know the deal with Deshaun Watson this offseason. I think it was 21 or 22 sexual misconduct allegations. Weird stuff happening in massage parlors. just so weird, so strange. Leaves such a bad taste in your mouth. You wouldn't expect it out of somebody like Deshaun. And while nothing has really come of those allegations in terms of serious stuff, it leaves a really, really bad feeling. And who knows? Is he going to play this year? He's been at like every other practice. Whether he shows up to practice or not is a complete coin flip at this point. I was of the belief that he wasn't going to play. He only just reported to camp about a week ago. It's just such a strange situation going on. But the fact of the matter is this. Deshaun Watson is the only thing worthwhile on the Houston Texans. Or like just the only thing. J.J. Watt was the only other thing, and now he's gone to Arizona. So it's just Deshaun Watson. So the fact of the matter is this. If Deshaun Watson plays, this team will still be terrible, but they'll win 3 games, 4 games. If Deshaun Watson doesn't play, this will be one of the worst teams we ever see in the NFL. I have them at 1-16, and the only reason I'm giving them a win is because I just think it's really hard to go 0-17. I think it's really hard to go undefeated, and I think it's really hard to go winless. This league has too much parity in it. But this is easily the worst team in the NFL. And if Watson doesn't play, it'll be like, 2016 Cleveland Browns type of bad. It's going to be embarrassing. It's going to be ugly. Almost funny to watch. But I have the Texans winning 1 game, and it wouldn't surprise me if they win 0. And I'm done talking about them because they're a terrible franchise. It doesn't deserve me spending this much time on them. So one last division, the AFC West. First place, let me just recap. So Titans, Colts, Jags, and then Texans in the AFC South. Just the worst division, in my opinion. So the AFC West. First place, needs no introduction, needs no explanation. The Kansas City Chiefs. This team had a very harsh reality check in the Super Bowl last February. A really harsh reality check. And I think it just woke them up a little bit. They were like, oh, we're not in La La Land anymore. We can't just, breeze our way to 14 wins and playoff victories and Super Bowl victories and just have it all be hunky-dory. This team has problems, and we need to address them. And to their credit, the Chiefs did address their problems. So what was their most glaring issue last year? If you watched even a play of the Super Bowl, you would know it was the offensive line. Granted, both starting tackles were out in that game for the Chiefs. Eric Fisher, who is now gone, had an Achilles injury, and their other tackle, Duvernay Tardif, I think, opted out of the season. So it was, already from the jump, that was going to be a problem. But they've just overhauled the whole thing. They traded for an all-pro tackle in Orlando Brown from the Ravens. Why the Ravens would let Orlando Brown go to the Chiefs of all places is beyond me, but Kansas City is saying, thank you, we'll take that very much. They drafted Creed Humphrey, one of the better centers in the draft, maybe the best center in the draft out of Oklahoma. That's a very big help. And they've made numerous other offensive line moves to just it's a completely new unit. And I think now with training camp, they'll have time to figure it out. Maybe it'll take a couple weeks at the beginning of the season. The Chiefs have a rough first 2 games. They play, I believe, Cleveland in week 1, and let me see who they play in week 2. Yeah, Cleveland in week 1, Baltimore in week 2, and then even the Chargers in week 3 isn't easy. Then the Bills in week 5, Washington week 6, Green Bay week 9. This isn't an easy schedule by any means, especially in the first half. So it might take a while to get things going for Kansas City. It might take a while for them to figure things out. And so I have them at 13-4. I think they will lose a lot of losable games, especially very early in the season. But this is still their division. There's no other team that really comes close to them. Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, they're all still there. Tyrann Mathieu, Chris Jones on the defensive side of the ball. Frank Clark was arrested recently, and I don't think he'll be back. So that's a big loss. I think the defense is still a bit of a problem for this team. I think their secondary is very average to below average. I mean, when your best L'Jarius Sneed is a really good piece, but like if your cornerback 2 is Bashad Breeland, I mean, you might run into some problems against some teams with really good wide receivers. So Kansas City, they'll be fine, but I think it's going to be a rough start for them, and they'll breeze through the second half and get some nice momentum going into the playoffs. So I have the Chiefs winning the AFC West at 13-4. Second place, I have the LA Chargers, maybe my most anticipated team to watch this year. Again, if you read my stuff at all last year, you'll know how strongly I feel about Justin Herbert. He was my QB1 in the 2020 draft, and he was the best rookie quarterback by far last year. Won Offensive Rookie of the Year, shattered all the rookie passing records. You know the drill. I mean, I truly think he's a generational talent. I mean, and anyone who watched a Chargers game last year they have to agree with that. I mean, he was incredible last year. What was the biggest problem with the Chargers last year? Well, they went 7-9, and they could have easily gone 12-4, 11-5. I mean, they lost so many close games late because of their boneheaded decision-making, thanks to their old head coach, Anthony Lynn, who's now gone. They brought in Brandon Staley now as their head coach. He was the defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams, so he stays in the city. But what does that tell you? So the Rams' defense has been incredible for the last few years, obviously, and rightfully so because they have a ton of talent. But this defense also has a lot of talent. Casey Hayward is now gone, which kind of sucks for them, but Derwin James hopefully will be back. Joey Bosa. Kenneth Murray, really showed up on the scene as one of the better rookie linebackers last year. This defense has a ton of talent, and I think with the right head coach, it can be developed into one of the better defenses in the AFC, at least in this division, which doesn't have great defenses. And then offensively, Austin Eckler is still a great running back out of the backfield. Keenan Allen, one of the better receivers in this league, just a stat sheet stuffer. And on the offensive line, Herbert's getting a lot of help. They brought in the All-Pro center Corey Linsley from Green Bay, and they were gifted Rashawn Slater in the first round, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. That's a great pick for them. A great big guy to help protect Justin Herbert's blind side. This is a new offensive line, a much better offensive line. Solid front office moves, solid head coaching decisions. This team is going to finally realize some of that potential that they missed last year. So I have the Chargers going 11-6, and I have them as the last playoff team in, the 7th seed wild card team. I just think there's too much talent. There's too many good things going on for this team to just not make the playoffs. Yes, it's the Chargers, so something will befall them that screws them over, because that's just how they are as a franchise. But they're just too good to not make the playoffs. I believe Justin Herbert will be just as good, if not better, than last year. And yeah, I have a lot of faith in this team. I'm super, super excited to watch them, mainly because of Herbert, but because I also think that, again, they're going to realize that potential, and I can't wait to see it happen. So Chargers, 11-6, second place in the AFC West. In third place, I got the Raiders. The Raiders are a really, really strange team. They have been forever, but especially under John Gruden, they just have that added level of strangeness. So what can you make of this team? Derek Carr is a good quarterback, sure. Serviceable. Top 12 to 15 quarterback in the NFL. Just very average. Josh Jacobs is a good running back. Also very serviceable, but nothing amazing. I think this team's best player is Darren Waller, the tight end, who has just really established himself as maybe a top 3 to 5 tight end in the NFL. Defensively, this team is all over the damn place, which is to be expected from the Raiders, from a John Gruden team, at least in this day and age. They did bring in Casey Hayward, which I think is great because they had like no other really good corners. But other than that, there's just nothing really going on with this team. They're just extremely average, in my opinion. They should be so much more, but the Raiders, I just say meh. Like extremely, extremely average team. I don't feel it with them at all, especially not this year. They drafted Alex Leatherwood in the first round, a tackle out of Alabama. That was just one of the more head-scratching decisions in the draft, at least in the first round of the draft. This team is so strange. I can't get a reading on them. They're very average, very meh. I'm just regurgitating the same point at this point. So, 8-9 for the Las Vegas Raiders this year. But hey, at least the stadium is cool, right? So, that's something. So, Raiders, 3rd place. 4th place, the Denver Broncos. This feels like a given. I think they can finish 3rd if they, figure things out, but I don't think they will. The main reason for that is Drew Lock. I think the Broncos are like the Dolphins light, in the sense that they have a really good roster from top to bottom, especially defensively. But they are lacking way more than the Dolphins are at quarterback because they still have Drew Lock as the starting quarterback. That inspires no confidence in anyone. He hasn't proven himself in his 2 years in the NFL to be anything really. Last year was the first time he really had the keys to the car, and they did absolutely nothing. Even after drafting Jerry Jeudy, who had a pretty good rookie season, especially towards the end, and I'm excited to see him carry over that momentum into this year because I think he can be one of the better receivers in this league. He's already one of its best route runners. Just such a sharp player, and one of the more exciting players to watch on this team. They still have, Cortland Sutton, another solid wide receiver. They still have Noah Fant, a good tight end, and their defense, like I said, is still very much stacked. Von Miller will be back, Bradley Chubb. This is a good team, but they just don't have a quarterback, and I don't see it with them. This division is tough. The schedule is tough. A lot of things aren't going in this team's direction. But I think if they can figure out the quarterback position, this will be a 10-win team, an 11-win team, but not this year. Because it's Drew Lock, and it's just not happening. So I have the Broncos at 6-11. Probably just praying every day that next year they get Aaron Rodgers or something. But yeah, 6-11 for the Broncos. So that's Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Broncos in the AFC West, and that's a wrap on the division. So this is the playoff picture based on that. The 1 seed is the 15-2 Buffalo Bills. The 2 seed is the 14-3 Baltimore Ravens. The 3 seed, the 13-4 Kansas City Chiefs. The 4 seed will be the 11-6 Tennessee Titans. And then your wild cards at 5, I have the Browns at 12-5. 6 is the Patriots at 11-6, and 7 is the Chargers also at 11-6. And I really think those are going to be the 7 playoff teams. I don't foresee that changing. I think the team that has the best chance of like sneaking in, maybe getting over the Patriots or the Chargers, it would likely be the Patriots based on the division, would be the Miami Dolphins if they just, eke out a couple wins. But I don't know, man. I just something about it is holding. I'm being held back. So that is my AFC preview and playoff picture. But before I wrap it up, I do want to just give brief little playoff picks based on those because this would be incomplete without it. So based on those seedings, the 2v7 wildcard game is the Chargers at the Ravens. First playoff game for Justin Herbert in Baltimore on the road in January. That cold weather, it would be too much. The Ravens are too good, too solid top to bottom. It would be Lamar Jackson's 4th playoff game. That roster is just really experienced. Now Lamar would be experienced. And, people love to hate on playoff Lamar, but he's got to figure it out eventually. And the Chargers would be a good team for him to figure it out against. So I would take the Ravens in that matchup. The 3-6 would be Chiefs-Patriots. That matchup is just inevitable, it seems. And the Chiefs would dismantle the Patriots in that game. The Patriots are a good team, but in the playoffs in Arrowhead, that's just too tough. Whether it's Cam, whether it's Mac, it doesn't make a difference to me. Give me the Chiefs in that. And then the 4v5 is an interesting game between Tennessee and Cleveland. The Browns at the Titans. The Browns would win, in my opinion, but it would be like a track meet. I think it'd be a shootout between two very high-powered offenses. But like I said before, my bread and butter in the NFL, and this is like amplified tenfold in the playoffs, is if you can run the ball well and you can play good defense, you will win football games. And I think the running game is comparable for those teams, but having Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb puts the Browns over the Titans just a tad, and then obviously the Titans can't play defense. At least the Browns can play defense. So I would take the Browns in that game. So the divisional round, said Cleveland Brownies would go to Buffalo to face the 1-seed Bills. And because Cleveland can run the football and get after the passer, and because Buffalo cannot run the football and cannot get after the passer, I think the Browns would win this game. It would be tough, a really, really tough road environment in Buffalo. It'd be frigid in the middle of January. But, I mean, it's going to be Josh Allen throwing the ball 50, 60 times or something crazy like that. I think the Browns roster, from top to bottom, just matches up really well with a team like Buffalo. And I think they'd make enough plays, especially defensively, to win them that game. Like I said, I just have such a weirdly strong feeling about Cleveland. And, I have them in the title game. So down goes the 1-seed Bills. Then in the other divisional game is another inevitable matchup, it seems, in the AFC, is the Chiefs at the Ravens. And if we were just going strictly on paper here, the Ravens would and should win this game, but no other team in the NFL, in fact, the only team in the NFL that has had Lamar Jackson's number throughout his young career thus far, is Kansas City. They just, either he can't figure them out, or they have him figured out, or Mahomes is that much better, or I don't know. And especially in the playoffs, with a guy as prepared as Andy Reid is, that's Kansas City's game to lose, even on the road. So, yeah. Baltimore's a better team, but the Chiefs just match up so well for some reason against them, and that's the difference in that game, in my opinion. So it sets up a Chiefs-Browns AFC Championship game in Arrowhead, a rematch of last year's divisional. Obviously, Mahomes went out with that concussion. Henne came in and saved the day. But I think things would go differently this time. Even though it's on the road, in Arrowhead, maybe the single toughest playoff environment, what do the Browns do better than the Chiefs? Certainly not throw the football, but they play better defense, and they run the football much, much better. And I truly, truly think that that's what you need. That's all you need. And it's not even like Cleveland can't throw the football, because they can. They can, Baker, I said it before when I was talking about the Browns. Baker Mayfield is a very good quarterback. He is. I think the Browns would win this game. And that's my pick. I have the Browns winning the AFC this year. As incredibly strange as that sounds, I think the Browns would go to Arrowhead, and it would be very close throughout, but their run game, their offense, more balanced, and their defense, more aggressive, also more balanced, deeper, would just make enough plays to win that game. Do I trust Baker Mayfield in an environment like Arrowhead? No. But at least he now has the experience there. And in this, hypothetical, he went to Buffalo and won. So, who knows? I just, I'm a Mahomes guy. I'm a Chiefs guy. Not a fan, but, I love Patrick Mahomes, and I'll always root for him. But this is just a strange game, a strange matchup, and I really think that the Browns, hungry for revenge for last year, but also just a really good matchup with Kansas City, would win this game, would win the AFC title, would win the Lamar Hunt Trophy in the house that Lamar Hunt built and make it to the Super Bowl. That's my pick. I have the Browns winning the AFC, going to Los Angeles in Super Bowl 56. Could it come back to blow up in my face? Absolutely. Will it? Probably. But hey, that's the whole fun of this thing. These are predictions, right? This is all up for interpretation. So yeah, that's it for my preview of the AFC. The NFC preview will be out tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. We'll find out who the Browns play in the Super Bowl in Los Angeles. And yeah, like I said before, the article for this is already up, so make sure and click the links down below. Follow the blog if you haven't. Hit the buttons, the like, the subscribe, the shares, everything. Anything and everything really helps me out, and I'd appreciate it a ton. So thank you for your time. Feel free to yell at me if you think I'm wrong about any of this. I'm welcome to any and all criticism. But yeah, thank you guys for your time, and I'll see you tomorrow with the NFC predictions. Take it easy.